Hello Year 10. You will notice on your remote learning task this week there is an exam question for you to have a try at. This question is a 3A type question. So just to add a bit of context to this, the Germany exam paper has a section A and a section B to it. And the section B part is made up of 4 questions and they're called 3A, 3B, 3C and 3D. Sorry, that's my dog barking in the background. These questions will all be on the same topic. So for example, the Weimar Republic recovery or something like that. Each of these questions will be testing your ability to analyse sources, so primary sources as well as your understanding of interpretations. So let's get back to this particular question type, a 3A question, which is worth 8 marks. For this question, you are evaluating how useful each primary source is for a particular inquiry. You have practiced this type of question before in your medicine course. You've also completed a prep exam for paper 1 practicing usefulness question types. You have also had feedback on how to answer a usefulness question type, and you have compared exemplar answers to a less perfect answer in class for that medicine unit 1 course. So hopefully you should be able to tackle this with ease. However, this video will help to support you further. The question is, study source B and source F. How useful are source B and F for an inquiry into the recovery of the Weimar Republic between 1923 and 1929? Explain your answer using source B and F and your knowledge of the historical context. So what are the key words in the actual question? Remember, we always highlight or underline the words that we must use repeatedly in our answer. So for this question, the key words are useful, and recovery of the Weimar Republic. The key thing to remember with this question is that you are evaluating how useful the sources are to tell us about the recovery of the Weimar Republic. Anything not linked to the recovery of the Weimar Republic is not useful or relevant to our answer. Now let's remind ourselves of how to tackle a usefulness question before reading the sources through. You must work out what the source is telling you about the recovery of the Weimar Republic. So we're looking at the content of the source first. You might like to pause this video now to create a quick mind map to recall your knowledge of the Weimar Republic recovery methods. Hopefully you came up with a mind map a little bit like this one. Again, you might want to pause this video now so you can compare your mind map to this one. So once you've looked at the content of the source and you've thought about your own knowledge and how that links to the source, you then need to have a look at the blurb. Now the blurb is otherwise known as the provenance, and you need to consider this because it will help you understand whether a source is more or less useful because of who it was maybe written by or the purpose of why it was written. So for example, was it written by someone who would have known about the recovery of the Weimar Republic specifically? Or is the purpose of the source, so why it was made, would the purpose influence how useful it was? So has it been made to go into a newspaper, so therefore maybe represents the public opinion in Germany about the recovery of the Weimar. Lastly, you need to think about the judgment. You need to think about how useful the sources are to tell us about the recovery of the Weimar Republic. And you need to think about the words you are going to use to express how useful the sources are. So very useful, extremely useful, partly useful, and so on. Now, just a little reminder, remember the feedback that you got from your medicine prep exam paper, because you did a usefulness style question on that paper. So maybe think about how you did on that and things that you did really well, or maybe need to focus a little bit more on. So let's have a look at these sources in a little bit more detail. So source B is a right-wing cartoon published in 1923. The figure behind the curtain represents the USA. The Wall Street was the US financial centre. The caption says, "Here is your enemy." So we need to think, what is the source telling us about the recovery of the Weimar Republic? It's referring to the fact that the USA supported the Weimar government with supplying loans. We know that Stresemann took out loans from the USA, so we can clarify that against our own knowledge to think about how useful this source is. It also shows a Nazi Party figure revealing that the USA is the enemy. When we think of our own knowledge, we could question if Stresemann's solutions were only short-term, papering over the cracks, because long-term, the USA suffered an economic depression known as the Wall Street crash, which meant that the USA had to ask for money back, which caused Germany further problems. So if I were you, I would start to answer this question now, thinking just about source B and the content of source B, what it tells you, and think about how you can compare this to your own knowledge to make a judgment about how useful the source is. But remember, you are only focusing on the content of this source and your own knowledge to do with the recovery of the Weimar Republic. This should take you 3 or 4 minutes to write down, so you might like to pause the video now to have a go at this. Then once you've completed that, you need to look at the blurb. Source B is a political cartoon, a right-wing political cartoon. So that means that this is going to be from a right-wing perspective. So that's a Nazi Party perspective. How might this affect the message in the source? Can we trust what the source is telling us? Could anything in the source be exaggerated? You might like to again pause the video now to write about how the blurb, the provenance of the fact this is a right-wing political cartoon, could affect the overall usefulness of this source when we are considering the recovery of the Weimar Republic. This should take you about 2 minutes to do. Finally, you need to make a judgment about how useful this source is overall to help us understand the recovery of the Weimar Republic. Very useful, partly useful, limited in its usefulness. This should take you 1 minute to write up, so have a go at that now. Once you've written your answer on source B, you must follow the same process for source F. What does the source tell you about the recovery of the Weimar Republic? Compare what the source tells you, the content of the source, to your own knowledge. Then reflect on the blurb and evaluate if this affects the usefulness of the source. and then overall make a judgment on how useful the source is for telling us about the recovery of the Weimar Republic. This whole paragraph should take you about 6 minutes. So have a go at finishing your answer to this question now, and any worries or concerns, please contact your class teacher via email. Good luck and have fun. Here's the question.